Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are cracking open the toolbox of a modern digital defender. We're going to look at the key skills, the actual commands, and the big picture frameworks they use to fight back against cyber threats. So, what does it really take to be on the front lines of digital security? Well, let's jump right in and find out.
So, let's start with the big question. What does a day in the life of one of these digital detectives, a SOC analyst, actually look like? You know, you can forget that old stereotype of someone just staring at green text scrolling on a black screen. This job is way more interesting. It's all about investigation, it's about spotting patterns, and it's about being that first line of defense in a digital battle that, frankly, never stops.
All right, first up, let's properly meet the digital detective. I want you to think of them almost like the paramedics of the digital world. They're the very first people on the scene when a security alarm starts blaring.
So at its core, a SOC analyst is that frontline defender for a company's most precious digital assets. They work out of what's called a Security Operations Center, or a SOC for short. And their job is really just this constant cycle. You monitor the network, you detect things that look weird, you analyze if it's a real threat, and then you respond decisively to shut it down.
Okay, so to find a threat, you have to speak its language. And in the digital world, that language is machine data. It's this constant, overwhelming stream of logs and events. And that brings us to what is probably an analyst's most powerful tool for translating all that chaos, Splunk.
Let's run through a quick little scenario, a micro case. An employee calls in, says something fishy is happening with their account. So, as the analyst, your very first thought is to hunt for any unauthorized login attempts. But how do you find every single failed login attempt across maybe thousands of machines and do it like right now? You do it with a simple Splunk query. Now, this one line of text is incredibly powerful. Let's break it down. The index equals event log part, that just points you to the right pool of data. Event code equals 4625, that's the specific universal fingerprint for a failed login on a Windows machine. And earliest equals -24H just tells Splunk, hey, only show me stuff from the last day. And boom, just like that, you've sifted through millions of events to find the exact handful that actually matter.
Okay, let's level this up a bit. Attackers absolutely love to use PowerShell. Why? Because it's a legitimate tool that's already on almost every Windows computer out there, which means they can use it to hide in plain sight. So how do you spot that wolf in sheep's clothing?
We use another event code. See, event code equals 4688 is what gets logged every single time a new program or process is started. So by filtering for a new process name that contains PowerShell.exe, this query instantly gives you a breadcrumb trail to follow. You can see every time it was launched, which user did it, and on which machine.
But you know, just finding the events isn't always enough. To really understand what's going on, to see the bigger picture, you have to aggregate that data. You have to analyze it. And this is where Splunk's statistical commands come into play. And you've absolutely got to know the difference between them. Choosing the right tool for the job here is just so crucial. You're going to use stats when you just need the final count, the simple summary. You use event stats when you need to compare one specific event to the bigger group average. And when you need pure, raw speed for a dashboard that lots of people are looking at, T-stats is going to be your best friend. Each one answers a very different kind of question. Finding one threat is great, but you can't manually hunt for every threat 24/7. It's just not possible. That's where scripting and automation come in. This is what becomes an analyst's force multiplier, turning those repetitive, manual hunts into automated guardians that literally never sleep. Okay. So imagine you're writing a script to check a list of, say, 100 suspicious IP addresses. You've got two basic ways to do it. Looping is like a single-lane road. It checks them one by one. It's simple, yeah, but it can be really slow. Threading, on the other hand, is like opening up a brand new multi-lane highway. It runs a bunch of those checks in parallel at the same time, making your scripts dramatically faster, when every single second counts. And the process for creating one of these automated checks is actually pretty straightforward.
Step 1, you write the script, the actual logic for what to look for. Step 2, you put it on a scheduler so it runs automatically. And Step 3, and this is key, you set it up to alert you only when it finds something that's actually suspicious. This frees you up from the mind-numbing task of running the same manual checks over and over and over.
And here's where it all really comes together in the real world. A senior analyst might use a PowerShell command, something like invoke command, to remotely grab data from hundreds of computers all at once. Then, they take all of that raw data and feed it into a Python script to do the heavy lifting, hunting for really complex patterns. It's this perfect fusion of tools, right? It's efficient, it's scalable, and it's incredibly powerful.
But look, analysts don't just make this stuff up as they go along. They don't operate in a vacuum. All of their work is guided by established frameworks that provide a structured, repeatable way to manage security. These are, for all intents and purposes, the rules of the game.
Now, while there are a ton of these frameworks out there, an analyst is going to run into these three all the time. The NIST CSF, that's a flexible guide for managing risk. ISO 27001 is a global standard for organizations that want to get formally certified. And then there's PCI DSS, which is a very strict mandatory rulebook for anyone who handles payment card data. Each one gives you a slightly different lens to view security through.
And right at the heart of the NIST framework are these 5 core functions, and they cover the entire life cycle of a security incident. You have to identify what you're trying to protect, you set up controls to protect it, you have systems in place to detect when something goes wrong, you have a plan to respond to it, and you have a plan for how you're going to recover afterwards. Literally every single task an analyst does fits into one of these 5 buckets.
So we've covered the tools, we've covered the rulebooks, but maybe the most important element of all is the analyst's mindset. Because, let's be honest, the tools are just instruments. The real skill, the real music, comes from the person who's playing them.
So just to recap, an analyst toolkit really rests on 3 main pillars. First, there's log analysis, being able to speak the language of data with tools like Splunk. Then there's automation, using scripting to scale your impact. And finally, there are the frameworks, having the discipline to play by the rules.
And this right here, this is the kind of insight that separates a good analyst from a truly great one. It's not about just finding one single failed login. It's about seeing the pattern in the noise. Think about it. One user failing to log into their own account a few times, that's probably just a typo. But one single IP address trying to log into many different accounts in just a few minutes, that's not a typo. That's an attack. It's about hearing the story that the data is trying to tell you.
And that mindset leads to an absolutely crucial skill: tuning your alerts. You see, an alert that triggers after, say, 5 failed logins might just be picking up a lot of noise from forgetful users and flooding your screen. But a smart analyst might look at past attacks and decide to tune that threshold up to 10. That one simple change can silence all the noise, letting them focus their attention on the signals that actually matter.
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway of all. The world of cybersecurity is never, ever static. The attackers are constantly changing their tactics. So the most critical skill for any analyst is continuous learning. The toolkit we've talked about today is powerful for sure, but it's just the starting point. The real question is this: how are you going to evolve it for whatever comes tomorrow?